Hi everyone,
Hey
welcome
guys.
to Girl Talk.
We got it right tonight.
Did we get it right,
It's
guys?
good to have you join us tonight for another incredible episode
Yeah.
of Girl Talk, Real Talk. And we've got an incredible young woman as a guest tonight.
So we have
Hi.
here Erica.
Good evening, everybody.
Tonight Erica's gonna be telling her story, and you know here on Girl Talk we love to keep it real. Have we been keeping it real with you guys this season? If we couldn't,
real deep.
if you didn't think you could get any deeper, trust me, we like to dig. So I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody from the feedback that we got from last week's episode. There's been so many messages, emails, DMs come through. And that's what the show really is about. It's about transparency, about keeping it real,
and
about
starting the conversation.
Exactly, and about shedding light on things that are labelled taboo or that people don't really want to talk about or feel comfortable talking about. So on tonight's episode, Erica is going to be telling her story. And it's so brave of you. Thank you so much for coming on. It's so brave of you to obviously tell your story. I was in the hot seat last week, so I feel I'm like breathe a sigh of relief.
She's all talkative today.
So in tonight's episode, we're going to be dealing with three major issues that are in Erica's story. The first being bullying. This is something that impacts millions and millions of people all around the world, and it's not just in schools and children. This happens amongst adults as well. Some of you may have been subject to bullying at your workplace, socially. Bullying is something that impacts so many different people from so many different walks of life. The next topic that we're going to be delving into is colorism. Now this is something that I don't hear talked about much. We hear the slogans and the phrases, Black Girl Magic, you know, all those different types of brown skin girl, the songs. So we really want to delve into what colorism looks like for us in our society. So we're going to dive into that as well. And then lastly, we're going to be talking about self-harming and depression. These are all things that have impacted Erica's life, and we know that she's not the only one. And she's bravely decided to speak up and tell her story. And we hope that tonight you find, if this is a part of your story, has been a part of your story, we really pray tonight that you find healing, closure, and, you know, somebody that you can relate to in Erica. So shall we begin?
Well, just before Erica begins, I think it's really important to also kind of lay a bit of background about who Erica is. Because I think that one of the things that I think I love about Girl Talk is that within Christianity and within the church, there's so many subjects that are glossed over. And one of those is that children that grow up in church are almost expected to be perfect. And when we were speaking, I love the fact that that's something that you drew on, and that inner conflict and that inner turmoil. So for those of you that don't know, Erica, how long have you been in Victory Church? How long have you been a member?
I'm 19 years. I'm 19 years old.
You were born in church.
Yeah, I was born in the church, basically.
So I think it's really important to kind of start with that as you know, so that everybody knows that you're a church baby, right? So you grew up literally on the altar, in church every week, you know, part of amazing children's ministry and amazing ministry and everything else. Yet you say that you encountered bullying. So can you just take us now to that part where your first memory, I guess, of experiencing bullying?
My first memory of experiencing bullying would have been in ballet, and I was around 7 years old, I think. I was the only black girl in the class, and my teacher and the other girls in the class would treat me differently. They would
The teacher as well.
yeah,
Wow.
which I only actually found out recently. My mum told me this.
Mm.
I don't actually remember her treating me too differently. I remember that my peers treated me differently. But yeah, they'd exclude me. I could see them talking about me in corners. And that's where it began. Like, I'd come home and I just hated it. I'd come home crying. But even back then, like, I knew that my mum would make me go back and basically stand up to everybody. So I never really told her what was going on. I just kept saying, like, I hate it, I don't want to be there anymore. So eventually she pulled me out. So yeah, and then obviously that carried on throughout school, because most of the schools that I went to were essentially white schools. Like, in primary school, I was the only black girl from years 3 to 6. And
In the whole school?
yeah, in the whole school.
In the
So
whole
as
school, wow.
there was no other black girl or black boy from years 3 to 6.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was not that diverse, to say the least.
Yeah.
Yeah, so even all throughout primary school, there was all sorts of names being called and people treating me differently, and I felt like an outcast from a very young age. And
And
obviously,
that was because of the colour of your skin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
and obviously I would come into church and everyone in church was black, so it should have balanced out, but I guess where I was the most is what I allowed to speak to me the most, which carried on then throughout secondary school. There was 8 black girls in a school of 180 girls in our year, and I went to an all-girls school, and the boys' version of our school they were very, I think because all sex schools, well, same-sex schools rather, everybody is like obsessed with the other partner version of the school. So everybody kind of knew each other, and for some reason black girls became a target for the bullying. And that's when I'd say the worst bullying in my life started to begin, because I'd start getting called names like charcoal, blister, burnt, all sorts of names like that. And it took a toll on my confidence, I would say.
And when we were speaking before, you mentioned that there was a WhatsApp group that
Yeah.
was started. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
So the boys' school would make WhatsApp group chat of their peers in their school, and they would add girls to the group chats and send pictures of the girls to the group chats, and they rate the girls, and they comment on our bodies, on our looks, all of that stuff. And sometimes they'd add the girls, but even if we weren't added, we would see what was being spoken about anyway. And it was awful. The black girls in the year were always coming out as bottom or as the topic of conversation. And a lot of the time we didn't even know the people that we were, like, that were speaking about us. We didn't even know them.
So would you say that this is exclusive to you, or is this a culture that is amongst schools? Because obviously I have a 16-year-old and I'm aware of, group chats that they have of where people were subject to bullying, teasing, being subjected to name calling, etc. So this isn't something that's exclusive to you.
No.
This is, I want to just speak to the parents of people that they might not be aware. So you're going to tell us later on in your story how that affected you, and how that kind of made you withdrawn and isolate yourself away from your family. But I just want us to really just explain to the parents, because you might be thinking, oh, that's not my child, this doesn't appeal to me, but often this is a culture in this generation.
Definitely. I think bullying is not specific to any school or even any race, to be honest. But it's so much more common than we think. And I think teenagers can become so good at hiding things and creating 2 different realities in the home and in school that everybody in their environment can be fooled.
And you made mention, which made my mum radar go on high alert. You said to us while we were talking that you were so ashamed of what was being said that you created a hidden folder to hide your WhatsApp messages.
Yeah.
First of all, how do you do that? Just so I know how to find it. And secondly, what made you want to protect those that were hurting you?
So how did I do it?
It's a good question.
It is. How did I do it? That
Tell all the mums, like, to get your notepads
I'm
out.
so sorry.
She's apologising to her peers.
You know what I mean?
I know, Mum.
You're all about to get exposed.
Folders.
Mums go and get their phones before they start deleting.
Folders can have locks that you can download apps to lock your app to, and when there's a folder on your phone, there can be multiple pages, and a lot of the time you click on the folder and it's just the first page, and if what you're looking for isn't there, you kind of give up. So I would create like multiple pages and put like WhatsApp on like the 10th page, and the rest of the pages would be empty.
So you'd give up before.
Yeah, exactly, before you find it.
So just to be clear, so I've got my phone here.
So every folder has
say for
pages.
example, I go into now my, I don't know, let's use one that's got games. So you're talking about this where you scroll across.
Yeah,
right.
So you would
So it's
hide
10.
it in there.
Yeah.
So say I got to the part where your WhatsApp was and I pressed it, have you now locked that? Is there a password on it?
Not now, but
back
in
then,
2015 it would have
because
been a
this
different
could
story.
save someone's
Yeah,
life. So
yeah.
I really want to understand. I have children, they're only 8 and 7 now, but this is really interesting. So if I get to that bit, because I will be that mum that checks your phone, so when I get to that bit and I press it and is it locked?
Yeah, you can lock it with passwords, with pins, with pictures. Like you have to take a picture of a specific object in a house to unlock it or anything. So it's quite encrypted.
So
Yeah.
if I'm really interested in this. Sorry, parents, I'm just going to do this for a minute.
I know
So-
your heads are all spinning right now.
I didn't
Okay,
even
so
know this.
if I
No.
have parental locks and controls on the phone, are you still able to do that?
I don't actually know too much about.
So you
parental
never
locks.
had any parental controls?
No,
on your
I don't
phone?
think they were as
Good to know.
common
Yeah.
when I was 15,
Okay.
16. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Carry on.
So let's just talk through. Obviously, you're now at the centre of this kind of smear campaign of bullying and name calling and
you said they're
groups
commenting
being
about your
created.
body.
Yeah.
And everything.
How did
Yeah.
that make you feel, and what was your actions as a result of the bullying that was taking place?
I felt isolated because, as I said, especially in times like primary when I was the only black girl.
Yeah.
In secondary there was 8 and 180, which still isn't many, but it felt like nobody around me could relate to what I was going through. So back then, because I felt isolated, I isolated myself as a result. I wouldn't tell anybody what's going on. I would go to school and I would put on this front and then come home and just shut myself in my room, and I didn't want to talk to anybody, and I don't know why. I wanted to protect those that were abusing me at the time, to be honest. I think because my mum is so outspoken and confident, I knew that if I were to tell her, she would take action. But I didn't know how that reaction would
come back.
come back to me.
Well, you'd have
So-
to live with it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
she would be able to go back home and like think that I was safe, but
That's one of the things I've noticed with a lot of young people that are going through that. They're afraid more of the consequences
Yeah.
because a parent can come charging in.
yeah.
And we charge.
And we want to deal with
like a
I
rhino.
mean every parent is like, if we could get away with it, you just take that child in the corner and give them what for, that they'll never touch your child again. But obviously you've got to now go back and face that group of people because that's your world.
Your peers.
We've stepped in and out, but you've got to live with those people because that must have been awful, getting up every day and having to think about going to school. That must have been something you probably were not even excited about.
Yeah, I was dreading it.
Well, I think what's so dangerous though about this type of bullying, and I think it's really important for all of us to really weigh in on the gravity of it, is this is cyberbullying. So literally, like, it can go in seconds, and it can be in the
Well, we
hands
see it.
of
We see
complete
it on the
strangers.
media all the
Yeah.
time. There was I think some reality person. This woman last year or year before committed suicide.
Yeah.
A grown up
Yeah.
because of cyberbullying. They
Yeah.
criticised her looks.
Caroline Flack.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was terrible.
Yeah. And I think the one thing that I really want to bring out as well is that this stuff is happening every single day. You know, it happens to males and females, and a lot of the time, you know, it's a mixed emotion because you're almost seeking acceptance from the very same people that are causing you all this pain and this hurt. I'll just touch on, obviously, my experience with Ashley and the signs that I saw as a result of him being bullied. He had become very withdrawn, very angry, actually, and just kind of would have these outbursts and similar kind of thing, would lock himself away in his room. Became very withdrawn. He often would say that he's not feeling well, to make excuses to not want to go to school. I guess when it would be days that, I guess if something's been going on in the chat that you maybe don't want to face that day, it's better to not attend than to have to go and face that. And eventually it got so bad. I remember this had obviously been going on for about 7 months. And one day, because he used to get the train to school and I'd pick him up from the station, he got into the car and just literally broke down. He said he doesn't want to go to school anymore. We pressed Y, and he just sobbed, and it was obviously, I think, just at the breaking point. It then transpired that he had been getting bullied for a number of months, where they'd been taking money from him, they'd been inflicting violence. It wasn't just a chat thing, this was actual physical bullying. And when we went to the school, they really didn't do much. They didn't, I didn't feel that they took it seriously. So, and I think that's why as parents you have to really be in touch with where your children, when you see changes in their character, in their behavior, those things don't usually happen for no reason. And when they're isolating themselves away, be in their business. And insert yourself into their business on purpose, because you know, and ask questions. You know who their friends are. Okay, are these friends or are they people in your life that are in the guise of a friend, but actually they're the very ones that are causing you pain and turmoil.
And I think don't accept your child being withdrawn. You know, it doesn't matter how long it takes. Just, you know, not bullying them yourself to get information. But I think, you know, going back a little bit here, I think as parents, I think you have to develop a relationship with your children. Oftentimes there is the parent and then there's a child, and so there's not that communication that's going on, but it's to build a relationship where your child can feel confident to talk to you. Did you have that with your parents, where you felt you could talk to them? I mean, whether you took advantage of it or not, was that there?
Yeah. My parents always made sure that I was able to come to them about anything. And they were always so involved and so passionate about everything that was going on in my life. And I think it's because I knew how much they cared that I was worried about what was going to happen if they did find out about the stuff that was going on, because I thought it would hurt them at the time that people were saying this stuff about me. And yeah, I don't know.
What are some of the signs that now you would say to every parent or aunt or guardian that's watching? What are some of the signs that you would say are warning signs of what you did that will be a red flag to us of something's wrong here?
Yeah, I would say if your child has acted one way their entire life, and then obviously when they go into teenagehood, teenagers for some reason just are moody anyway. But
it's an understatement.
But yeah, if there's like drastic change in behaviour, it's not normal for your child to be locked in their room all the time when they're home. And if they become quiet, timid, when that's not normally their character, they show reluctance to go to school, they show reluctance to talk about their life, reluctance to blend their home life and their school life together, anything like that. I think there's all.
Can you give us an example of that?
So a lot of the time I didn't want to bring friends home because I was worried that they would say the wrong thing, or that they would that somebody would overhear about what I was going through in school, or things like that.
So we should be bringing friends home.
If you want to. Yeah.
No, but that's really interesting, because that's not necessarily something, I don't know about most parents watching, but I wouldn't have seen that as a red flag.
I think it's having relationships with your children's friends.
Yes, and I think
it's
really
it's
important.
making I think knowing who your children's friends are. I think especially it's a lot easier when they're a lot younger. You have play dates, etc. But as they get older, it's harder to keep a hold and keep a rein of who they are socializing with, who they're talking to. Like we speak to Ashley's friends, like they're on speakerphone and they know who we are, we know who they are. And I think that's really important because I need to know if you're going to go out anywhere, I need to know who you're going to be with. And I think that's really important. It's not intruding in their life. That's our right as a parent to know who your children are friends with.
So did your friends know about the bullying?
Yeah, but a lot of the times I didn't have the right friends back then. So they saw the stuff going on, but not all of my friends. A lot of my friends did stick up for me, mainly my black friends actually. But my other friends saw what was going on and they would never defend me while it was happening. So if they were in the group chat and seeing the black girls or me getting slaughtered, they wouldn't say anything.
That's not a friend.
Yeah, not at all. But yeah, at the time, they knew. It was like well known throughout the year that this stuff was going on.
So a question for you, because I think that this is something that parents have always struggled with in terms of giving my children privacy, respecting their, they're getting older, they're not babies anymore, and also protecting them. Do you wish that your mum had kind of forced her way in and scrolled through your phone, or done random spot checks, or looking back now in hindsight, being older and obviously coming out of that situation, what would you say to parents? Like, how far should we go in? Because obviously the danger is if you leave your child, then you also leave them in this pain. And obviously you grew up in a church environment where, even though what you were going through was awful, you did have a base to kind of come back to in your belief system. Many children don't have that. So, we know that teen suicide is huge. It's a huge epidemic. So what would you say to parents, to your mum, to any mum, parent, dad? What do we do? Do we go through your phones or do we leave you with your phone?
I would say...
And I know it's not going to be popular with all the youth that's watching.
There's going to be two sets of people sat at the edge of their seats for this answer. I would say your child deserves a level of privacy, in my opinion. This might not be the most popular opinion. So I don't believe that regularly checking your child's phone might necessarily be the way forward. But every now and again, I do wish that my mum had found something in my phone. Not necessarily for her to even do something, but it would have started a conversation that I couldn't start myself, that I couldn't bring myself to talk
really
about
powerful.
it. So,
and at what point did you have the conversation, or did you ever have the conversation with your parents? Have you ever had the conversation?
Or are they watching it?
Or this is the conversation?
It was last night, actually.
Oh wow! Really?
Yeah,
Really?
Yeah, it actually was.
Wow.
Yeah, because it was a thing where I struggled in silence with it for so long, and once I did deal with it in the way that I had to, I was like, I didn't feel the need to talk about it anymore. But in hindsight, that wasn't the way forward. I think from the day that I got set free, I should have gone to talk to them and say, this has been my life up until this point. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about it beforehand, but yeah.
As if you were a parent now, what would your actions be? If you've got children, would you check their phones? Would you be doing all the things that you're like reserved about right now? But put yourself in the role of now you've got children. What would you do?
If I had children now, oh gosh, it wouldn't be my first resort. My first resort would be to communicate with them. I think, but obviously teenagers can lie. So I really try to push. If I see that there's behaviour that doesn't seem like it's in their character, I'd push and I'd ask, like, is everything okay? What's going on at school? why don't you bring your friends home, this, that, the other, and if they continue to withdraw, then I would check they're fine.
Yeah, and I really want to encourage, because you may think that this is for teenagers. It's not. Bullying happens from an incredibly young age. I know, obviously, working in children's ministry, we see these issues come up quite often, and you know, it can go to as young as 5 or 6. You know, and children can be very cruel sometimes.
Like in adults.
Yeah, and
adults. It's become a culture.
Yeah.
And when we look at people like, you know, Meghan Markle, that's a big one.
Yeah.
And that's been going on. It's
Yeah.
blatant bullying.
Yeah.
And regardless of how they want to dress it up, fix it up.
I watched Piers Morgan. He just stated it.
It's awful.
It's awful.
It's adult bullying.
It is.
And they, you know, God forbid anyone stands up to them, they go for you. So we have this culture of bullying. You know, it's like if people post a comment on an article on their social media,
I think,
people gang up and slate them
well,
because of their opinion.
I think a real issue on that, and I think that has divided a lot of people, is the vaccination.
Oh gosh.
And I think that there is a level of
bullying
that comes with that, because if I have an opinion of not wanting to take the vaccine, the way that it's being presented now is that you're selfish, that you are, and this has come from our queen, that you're selfish,
or
and
that you're a conspiracist.
Yeah, and
I had that. I had a dental appointment the other day, and that was the first conversation my dentist struck up with me. And I'm sitting there, and I'm feeling this pressure. And I'm getting all the, you know, this is selfish, you're not thinking about anybody else, and why don't you want to do it? And I'm thinking, I didn't come here to have this conversation, and I chose not to engage him in the conversation. But I thought, this pressure, he's never been like this before, but it's like politics now. It's this what did he call me? Anti-vax.
Yeah, an anti-vaxxer.
So it's like, so there's this bullying thing.
So I think that we just have to, even as adults, be kind with our children, be observant.
Absolutely.
You know, when they come home from school, and I know I speak to so many parents who say the same thing. You know, they say, you know, how's your day? Fine. And it's these one-word responses, but you need to dig deeper. You know, draw it out of them. You know, don't give them their phone, or don't give them their toys, or give them until they actually conversate with you, and make that the priority, because children naturally, even if they're not the most talkative, it's going to come out. And I think if you get into the culture, develop the culture of communicating, your child will feel like you're a safe space to, obviously, when things are not going the way that they would like it to go, for them to come and speak to you.
Well, a habit that myself and my children have is every day that I pick them up, I ask them the same question. How was your day? What was your favourite part of the day? What was your least favourite part of the day? And then I ask them why. And I find then that they, even unconsciously, begin to tell you. And we do this every single day. And I remember one occasion where an incident had happened with Maya, and because that's the first thing, while we're walking to the car, whatever, we don't even wait till we get to the car, that's the first thing I ask them. I literally turn the car back round. And I think it's really, really important as well that we don't just ask the question, but when we receive information that shows us that they are not being well treated, or that they've been abused in any way, they see that we react to it and that we believe them. And so I think it's really, really important that we are creating those safe zones with our kids where they do feel like they can come to us and they will be heard. Because I know as a parent, sometimes your kids are talking, but you almost have this switch that sometimes can switch off and just kind of have them in the background because they don't stop. But I think it's really important that we are intentional with our listening in those moments when we pick them up from school, or when we see them for the first time that day, that we do take those 15 minutes or those 20 minutes to intentionally listen. That means we put down the devices, we put down the phones,
actually listen.
we actually, you know, we're not watching TV while they're talking to us, but we actually stop and listen. 90% of the time it will probably be just like, oh, my best friend Jack, or my best friend Lucy, or whatever. But I think it's really important as parents that we do that. But I want to go back, because we've got quite a few questions on this as well. So you spoke about being the only black child in your school, which I think is crazy. would you have preferred, because I've heard also this raised a lot as a question, would you have preferred for your parents to put you in a more ethnic minority school, is that the correct
Or a
term?
more diverse
Or a
school.
more diverse school, so where there was a lot more black children, a lot more children that look like you, because I think representation is really important, because if you had no black children, I doubt you had any black teachers.
Not one.
No. So I think, and Indian's not black as well, for anyone that's watching that thinks that it's black is black and Indian is a separate race. So what would you say, because there's a lot of parents asking this question now that are now going, oh my gosh, my son's the only black child in their school, is he being bullied? So what's the answer that you, because you've been through that, and we're going to talk about the effects of that in a minute, but what would you say to your parents? Do you recommend it?
I would say being the only black child in a predominantly white school does not automatically equal bullying. So don't now start worrying like, oh no, my child's being bullied. That's not necessarily the case. However, it is a large possibility, and putting your child in an ethnically diverse school, although it is a better representation of what our world looks like, it is also not a fix, because a lot of the colorism that I was going through was from black boys in the boys' school. And so it's not all white people doing the discriminating and the bullying and all of this stuff. There's stuff going on within our own community.
Can you just, for those that have not heard that word before, colorism, what does that mean? What does that look like?
So colorism is discrimination towards dark-skinned women. In any all men, in any culture, there can be colorism in the Asian community, in the black community as well, and I think in the black community it is very prevalent. And it's something that I experience a lot of in school.
That's an old one. You know, I think I was sharing this when we met up the other day. I was in St. Vincent with my husband, and there was a lot of people that was his complexion, and this woman in front of me, to my face, in front of my husband and his mum and everyone, oh, you're quite pretty for a darkie. And she said it like I wasn't, you know, she was complimenting me. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, no one's ever like blatantly said that. But it's not something new. It's actually a common thing amongst black people.
Yeah, it is. And I think that it's really what really we wanted the takeaway to be in raising this topic is to really take a good look at ourselves, because a lot of the time colorism is in us and we don't even realize, and it's till that's challenged, or sometimes we are programmed with particular mindsets that we don't even realize exist. So for example, I know in the Caribbean culture, for example,
hair texture,
it's if you're considered brown skin, they would consider me as being brown skin. So you almost have like some sort of superiority over, for example, a darker skin person. Now that's not the case, but a lot of the time, just from it's passed down from generation to generation, and we feel like if we produce, I've even heard it, people marrying particular other races just so that their children can be of a lighter skin tone. Some people go to that extent because they see a lighter skin tone or a light skin or a mixed race person as being more attractive than a darker skin person. And I really want us to address that tonight, because I think that this exists so much more than we actually realize. And I think people mask it behind Black Lives Matters, you know, Black Girl Magic and all of these different things. But is there hate on hate with darker skin to lighter skin? Because a lot of the time when we spoke about this on the call, when we were talking about this, that sometimes as a lighter skin person, you can be made to feel inferior.
So I was saying when we met this week that I've actually only experienced bullying from black girls.
I was
that was darker than me. So I remember actually going to walk home and someone stopping me as I was about to turn the corner and said, Sarah, there's 5 black girls waiting under the bridge for you. They have bricks and scissors. They're going to shave your hair and they're going to smash your face in. And fortunately, I believe God or whatever else, we had another friend who is a similar complexion, similar hair texture, and I remember her being chased
Wow.
through the streets of London, and the way they had bricks to smash her face, they had scissors to cut off her hair, and she ended up running into a shop, and the shopkeeper came out with a bat, and that's how the girls left her alone. So I think that this is something that is really prevalent in our community, and it needs to stop. On both sides. Beautiful is beautiful, and I think that we need to celebrate. Like when Erica first told me this story, I was like, "Are you crazy? Like, your skin is amazing. I'd have done anything for your skin when I was your age, or even now." You know, but I think that it's so ridiculous, and it's something that we all need to.
By parents, isn't it?
We need to deprogram.
Well, a child is a blank canvas, and for a child to learn racism, it had to come from somewhere. And I know for me, getting married, that was a big issue with my husband's family. The colour of my skin was, you know, if I was his colour, they would have celebrated me, but because of the colour of my skin, they rejected me. They didn't even come to our wedding. So racism is just it's been in the older generation, and it has filtered through because we make comments. You know, you know, this is stuff we do, even unconsciously. We'll comment that they're a skinned child, and we'll make comments about their complexion, and it's all seeds that's sown in them. So when they do come up against somebody, they act superior if they're fairer, because that's been seeded in them. So we need to stop that.
And I think really just let's just dig a bit deeper, because I think that let's think about our upbringing. Let's think about, for example, if we are to have children now and they marry, for example, somebody of a dark skin tone or a different race, how would you feel? Honestly, honesty is good.
This is real, girl talk. Real.
Honestly, how would that cause a reaction in you? Be honest. If for example, you are from a particular place in Africa or a particular place in the Caribbean, and your child decides to marry somebody from a different country or whatever that might be, you know, I've had conversations with adult women who said, "Oh, I can only marry somebody from my country because I won't be able to relate to anybody else." Well, first of all, you cut yourself off from a whole heap of people that are out there, but you're also, it's not just about that, it's about what's going on in your mind, why you feel like that is justified or okay, because the reality is God could bring somebody for you, and if you're not open to that, you can end up shooting yourself in the foot.
Well, there's a Sunday school teacher that you lot grew up with. She's passed away now, but so many guys came to propose to her. There's so many guys that liked her, but she was fixated in her mind. She was black. She wanted a white husband, and I think it was all tied up to do with what the kids are going to look like, what type colored children she was going to have, and she rejected every man that approached her that was black, and she died single. She never did get married. She missed it because she just was so fixated on he's got to be white.
Even my driving instructor, we were driving and she drove past this black man, and she was like, her daughter was taken, was married, and she was like, I wish my daughter had married a black man like that. I'd love to have some mixed race babies and things like that. And the thought of, she's white, and the thought of even her forcing this, because she definitely says this to her daughter a lot. But so even the thought of that her daughter was taken and she was still forcing these ideals on her, it's very odd.
So let's talk about some of the stereotypes that obviously come with being more black or less black. You know, a lot of the times, especially in our culture,
we use words like good hair, bad hair, you know, like Erica and I have two completely different hair textures. I think both of them are beautiful. I don't think that Erica's hair is bad hair and my hair is good hair. But this is terms that we've allowed to be used in our society, in our community.
But it's programming. It's all that programming from a
Yeah.
child, like, oh, okay, I might be able to slick my hair, or you know, I might be able to just literally wash it and
Well, I think
let
subconscious.
it dry naturally.
Yeah.
It doesn't make one better than the other.
Yeah.
I think
Mm.
what makes good hair or bad hair
Yeah.
is how you care
It's
for
healthy
it.
hair.
Yeah, it's healthy
It's
hair.
healthy
Yeah.
hair.
You know, I know, for example, somebody like Dupe, she has an Instagram page where
Yeah.
it's all about hair
Yeah.
and how to care for your hair. And I think it's really about the way that we care for
Yeah,
our hair
yeah.
that makes good hair or not
Yeah,
so good
yeah,
hair. I
yeah.
don't think that it's about texture or curl patterns.
No.
It's about what we do with what God's given to us.
Yeah.
It's interesting the type of hair that people weave with.
But I think one of the things that you said when we were speaking,
Mm.
Eric, and I think that this is really important to bring up, is you said that for you, when you went to buy makeup, correct me if I'm wrong because I don't have my notepad with me, but you said when you went to buy makeup and there was no colour, no shade that was your colour,
Yeah.
there still is no bronzer that is for your colour, and there was no blushes for your colour, then you automatically in your head said, then my colour must be wrong.
Exactly. Yeah. I think I must have been around 16 or 17 when I saw foundation in my colour for the first time.
Wow.
And I remember going to all of these makeup stores with my friends throughout secondary school, just like Boots or MAC or whatever, and just seeing the range stop at like
45.
yeah. And I would look at the range and I'm like, wow, if every single store doesn't accommodate to us, then we just must not be worth it, or they don't think that there's enough of us out there that are wearing makeup, that we don't like makeup, or I don't know what it was, but it just fed into every single thing that I was hearing around me.
And I think that's sorry, Danny. I think that that's so important as mothers to be aware of. Like for me, you know, when you're saying that, it makes me think, you know what, I want to be with my daughters when they buy their first makeup, regardless of what color they are, so that any of those fears or any of those thoughts can be eliminated, because it is quite daunting. You're kind of trying to find yourself, and you're trying to, like, you know, find products to suit you. And I think that, you know, there probably was products. They wouldn't have been a lot at your age, but there probably was products. But because you were young and you didn't know, and there was no one, you wouldn't have necessarily known where to go.
Yeah.
So I think that that's really important. That's what I'm taking away from what you're saying. That we need to be really proactive with our daughters in that process.
And I can imagine that this created insecurities in you. Just talk us through, you know, obviously having to face that. How did that make you feel?
I chose all the wrong ways
Okay.
to deal with everything that I felt. So when I didn't see myself being represented, or when I heard this stuff being said about me, or every single time I saw a group chat or a picture or a comment or whatever, I always chose to isolate. And I think when you're by yourself and you're in that dangerous state, that is when your thoughts just come to bombard you. The devil has you at your most vulnerable, and he manipulates you. So I dealt with that the complete wrong way, and I spiraled for a really long time. And I think I didn't even know that I had taken it in and soaked it in so much until I reached breaking point, like several years later.
And talk us through, if you don't mind, when it kind of came to a head, when you were like, this is actually a really big thing in my life.
Yeah. I'd say the day that I realized was the first day that I self-harmed. There was a WhatsApp group chat where it all started, and I can't even remember what everybody was arguing about, but there's some kind of dispute or something, and what everyone's kind of defense tactic was to go straight for the look, as in, if you couldn't think of anything else to say, just go straight for the looks. And a boy from the boys' version of our school came for my looks, and then he just kept going and going and going, and I don't know how he knew, but he knew that I was having mental health issues at the time. And he was like, if you're so upset, if you're so depressed, just go kill yourself. If you're this upset, if you hate yourself this much, then just go kill yourself.
Wow.
And that day, that was the first time I self-harmed, because I knew I didn't want to kill myself for two main reasons. Those being, one, I knew I'd go to hell, and the second that the impact that it would leave on my family, I would not be able to, I wouldn't be able to bear. So I was like, well, the next best thing I can do is, if I can't kill myself, then I guess I have to harm myself, or I might as well just do what everybody wants me to do. So I would go into the kitchen when nobody was home, and then cut my wrists or my legs to just feel like I was finally doing what everybody around me said I should.
So you were almost at the brink of like, so you're almost acting out as if you were taking your life, but you're not actually committing to the full act.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people struggle to understand self-harming. A lot of people are like, oh, why would you mark your skin? Why would you? Just talk us through, because I think that that's something that if you've never been in that place, if you've never had to experience that, talk us through self-harming. What's the mindset? What's going through your head when you go to the kitchen to take a knife to cut yourself? Talk us through what you were thinking in that moment.
What I was thinking was, I hated myself so much. Like, everything about myself I just couldn't stand, and I was so deeply and badly in pain that I wanted to
to create a pain.
You
create a pain that's stronger than the pain that you're actually going through.
Could have been just to feel something different. There's no logic behind it now. Like, the reason I'm struggling to give an explanation is because it doesn't make any sense. But at the time, I just think all I could think was just, I need to feel pain. If everybody around me wants me to be in pain, like, and I say everybody around me, this was one comment, one boy, one person's opinion that made me do this. But
this was his opinion piled on top of lots and lots of years
stuff that I'd buried for years and years that I didn't deal with at the right time.
And how did you conceal the self-harm?
So this is definitely something to look out for, by the way, especially if it's summer and your child is always wearing long sleeves and trousers and covering their arms and forearms and legs and stuff. That's not normal. It's like when you're at home and it's summer, like it's hot, you shouldn't be wearing clothes. But when I went to school and it was summertime, people would just be in their t-shirts, then I'd be wearing a blazer to cover the scars. Or I do it on my thighs underneath my skirt, so nobody would be able to see it. It was never really in areas that were visible.
And people are commenting, and I'm trying to read it and listen to you at the same time. So I know we've spoken about this, so I'm going to bring some of this in. I think what for me really stood out to me is you said that your mom constantly told you to be proud of who you are, constantly told you to celebrate your blackness and your uniqueness. So it wasn't that you weren't hearing these things at school, at home, and you said that even in church you felt almost like you didn't have a right to feel depressed or suicidal because you heard the opposite when you went to church. But you made a comment and you said, but what I was hearing more consistently and more frequently deafened what you were hearing from your mum and what you were hearing from your church. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that, because there's a lot of people that are very interested in this part?
This is what I meant when I said I dealt with this in the wrong way. I think when you're going to school and you're seeing all these comments online about yourself, if you leave it, or if you're not ridiculously proactive, it is just easiest to let what's in front of you be what's true. And I was going home and my mum was, like you said, always telling me, like, you should be so proud of who you are. She was, she obviously grew up in Ghana, but she went to a white school in Ghana, and she was one of the first black people to go to that school, and she it's not even like she couldn't understand what I was going through, which is so silly now that I think about it, because she did the exact same thing several years ago. But yeah, I just
I love what you said, that what was in front of you became true. And I think that that's so important, that that's what was put continually in front of you. And I think that as parents, we are guilty of leaving our children with devices for way too long. You know, they're at school, they've got their devices, they come home and they're in that environment, they come home, they're on their devices, sometimes till they go to bed, sometimes they fall asleep with those devices. So you were literally confronted with this continually.
And it came to points where at night I would go back to group chats even when nobody was talking on them anymore, and just keep reading through messages or read through comments on my Instagram and stuff like that. And it was like, it felt like the stuff I was hearing at home and in church was, it resonated, but I didn't believe it for some reason. Well, I guess because
there's a saying that one negative comment can cancel out 100 positive comments, and I think that's why I think as parents, as peers, as sisters, as aunties and uncles, or whoever you are, I think that's why it's so important that we continually speak life into our young people, into each other, because it isn't exclusive to school. Bullying happens in the workplace, it happens all around us, and I think that, you know, really check in on people. I think it's really important to actually find out and inquire if people are okay. I think a lot of the times we presume that everyone is good because they smile, and I think church is very much guilty of that, that, you know, you come in and you have that plastic smile on your face, and like all the while you're like crumbling inside. And I think that, you know, it's about us being sensitive, and actually when you ask somebody how are you, I think it's just such a flippant comment.
Well, ask with the intention you actually want to hear.
Well, exactly. And I think a lot of people kind of you know, shy away from actually wanting to find out. I think if you're honest, a lot of the times you actually don't want to find out if somebody's not okay. And I think you can ask questions in a way that can dig deeper.
But I think as well, training our children, like one of the conversations that I have with Maya and Kayla all the time is, it's not okay to also watch someone else's pain. And this is one of the things that I talk to them about a lot. And I'm really proud of Kayla. One of her best friends, Kiana, was being bullied very severely to the point where she'd started self-harming, but through nail biting, to the point where she'd bite down to literally till it bled. And Kayla literally went in like a bulldog. She had a conversation with me, and I said, you stand up for your friend and you confront them, and if they're pushing her to one side, you go stand with her and you two form your own thing. And I think that it's so important that we also teach our children that you stand for what's right, even when it's unpopular. And I think that that's a really important conversation to have with our kids as well, not only about the bullying and, you know, opening up and speaking up, but also when you see something wrong,
and they
don't
will see.
stand, and they will see they will see it. Let my child be the one that steps up and goes, back off, because sometimes that's all that needs to happen. That's all that needs to happen in a situation, that they just needed one person. If one of your friends had actually stepped up in that chat and been like, back off, that would have changed
or I'm leaving.
or I'm leaving this
We're
chat.
leaving.
You know what? You know, you guys are losers. Like, I'm leaving, and so is Erica. She's coming with me.
It boils back down to that popularity thing that kids vie for in school, isn't it?
And acceptance.
Yeah, and acceptance. But I just want to say, you know, there's something unique that we have as Christians, and that's called discernment. And it's so important that we are discerning, not just with our families, but discerning with members of congregation, because even within a family, you know, I read about Christian men that have committed suicide, and how would we miss that, you know? Because if we're actually praying for them, and if we're actually truly born again, we should pick up something is wrong, because we have that discernment. And I really want to encourage you to just really tap into that, and maybe take a bit more time to pray for your family, pray for your children, pray for your husband, because it's not just kids that are going through depression and suicide and things like that. A lot of men actually commit suicide.
But I think it goes back to what we said last week, where transparency produces transparency. And I think if we don't create that culture in our homes, in our friendship groups, a lot of the time it is easier to suffer in silence. And I think when we are transparent, when we share our experiences, when we share our vulnerabilities, it then makes room for everybody else. It really gives people courage to speak their truth and to speak out. And I think that that's really important, that we are conscious to create environments of transparency.
So we've got 5 minutes left. So when was the moment where, and it's gone quick, isn't it? So when was the moment where you were like, that was a aha moment, you know what, this needs to stop, I have a problem? And how did you get over that? How are you dealing with it now? And have you forgiven those that have done this to you? Have you ever confronted them? That's one of the questions that has been asked. And last thought.
I would say my aha moment was I was on a youth retreat, and a lot of women were sharing their testimonies around me, and I don't know why, but I started crying. Nothing was wrong. It was my A-level results day. It was actually a good day for me. And I just started crying for no reason. And I think all that entire summer, in fact, there was just loads of stuff weighing and burdening on me, and it just kind of came out that day for some reason. The youth leader took me out and she asked what's wrong, and at first I tried to deny it. Again, that's always my instinct to say just nothing's wrong. And she just kept pushing, saying like, what's wrong, tell me, why are you crying? And I was just like, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to constantly be feeling this anymore. I'm just tired. And she essentially took me through a movie plot of The Terminator, which is about like a waitress who doesn't think her life means much, and something that comes from the future to eliminate her in advance because like it knows the impact that she's going to have later on. And she said, all of the experiences that you've had in your life, all of the bullying, all of the comments, it has built up and you haven't dealt with it in the right way. So she prayed with me, and we went through every single thing that I thought about myself, and she corrected every single negative thing with the truth about what God has said about me. And say that day was a real turnaround. I really had to work hard to reset the way that I think. Up until that point, it was everything that was in front of me is what was true. Everything that was loudest, everything that was there was true. And I had to reprogram the way that I think to say, okay, everything that God says is true. Everything in the Bible about me is true. And that's what I live up to today.
It's amazing.
Amazing.
And have you forgiven those that...
Oh yeah. That was hard. I can't say it came easily or yeah. I actually had to do it last year. And I can't even remember where I heard this, but it was like within the last week. When you're forgiving someone, say their name in their prayers. In the prayer, it helps. Yeah, and it helps you to set them free. Yeah. And you don't deserve to carry the pain from what people have said about you for that long. They're going about their lives. You deserve freedom too. Yeah. So yeah, I forgave them last year, and I'm way better off for it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Have you confronted them?
No. I don't like. We all went to our separate universities and all that stuff,
and she got into her dream university. I think we echo everybody online that you are beautiful,
stunning,
strong, stunning,
powerful black woman.
And we are so proud of you. We're so proud of you for speaking your truth. Thank you so much for being so transparent, for sharing. Is there anything you want to say to anyone that is going through this at the moment? Any parents? Do you want to leave any last thoughts before we close?
Or to any of your peers?
Or to any of your peers?
The peers who are having mental health issues, I would say don't settle for this mindset that you have. God wants more for you than to have anxiety and to have depression. That is not his plan for you. He wants better for you. He has better for you. So don't just settle. Don't say, well, I guess this is just my story, or I guess this is just something that I'm just going to have to silence or deal with it up front. And you can only deal with it when you open your mouth for the first time. It's hard to face alone, but the burden shared is truly a burden half. And to parents, I would just say the prayers and the reassurance and all of the affirmations that you speak to your children and the scriptures that you tell them, it works. It does work. And even if they don't say it at the time, or it resonates. And I think a lot of the stuff I'd heard both from church and from home saved my life. Because I knew that taking my life was not the option because of what I'd heard.
Powerful.
Thank you so
Powerful.
much, Erica.
Thank you. We're so
Hasn't
proud
she
of you.
been so incredibly
Amazing.
brave?
Amazing.
We've loved hearing her
Yeah.
story,
Yeah.
and we just want to really encourage anybody, if this is your story,
Yeah.
please feel free to reach out to us,
Yeah.
or speak to somebody that you
Yeah.
can trust.
Yeah.
You don't have to do life by yourself.
Yeah.
You know, it's good to do life with other people.
Yeah.
So we want to just thank you again for coming on, for being so brave and being so honest.
Thank you.
And let's remember to be kind.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
remember to be kind.
It costs nothing to
It
be
does
kind.
cost you
It goes such a
anything.
long way.
Everyone has a
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
You do not know their story. So when we meet each
Yeah.
other,
Be sensitive.
let's remember our sisterhood and let's
Yeah.
be kind.
Yeah.
So we will see you all next week
Next
for
week.
another
Yeah.
episode.
We have
of
another
Girl
deep
Talk.
one next week. It's going to get lighter at some point.
At some point.
In season 2, but season 2 we've just gone straight in. So yes, we've got another powerful. Bring your tissues next week.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
We'll see you next
We
week.
will see you next week. We hope you've enjoyed tonight's
See
episode.
you.
Bye.
Bye.